All right, welcome back to the Unwritten Rule. Today's Monday, December 30th. We're doing a quick show here, just kind of recapping the Tigers' final game of the season in a trans-perfect Music City Bowl victory, 27-24 over Iowa. Tigers took a little shot, being the best black and gold team in the Midwest, taking down the Hawkeyes, a game that should have happened 4 years ago in 2020, but was postponed or was canceled due to COVID regulations. Not enough players could play in that game. They got their makeup game this year. Game looked like a little bit out of reach for the Tigers at one point. Tigers stormed back, clawed their way back, and I think no better way, to start this quick recap for us, Payton, than looking right at this final video. I think a lot of the people that will be watching with us or listening to us, we're only going to be on the YouTube to start, but big stop there to force to stop the Iowa Hawkeyes from getting a first down. I mean, Peyton, just initially watching that, I know my phone was blowing up with all the Mizzou fans and just Mizzou alumni that were texting. But what was your initial takeaway right when you saw that play?
It was really, I don't know. It was just kind of like almost a perfect encapsulation of the year, because it's just for 3/4 of this game, it was absolutely miserable viewing for Mizzou. I mean, they were playing so poorly on defense, just a lot of mistakes. But that play, it came right off the heels of giving up 18 yards on a check down. But they found a way to close the deal. That's just kind of what Missouri did all year long. It wasn't a perfect season. I truly, I saw a good tweet about this. I apologize for not remembering who, but I have no idea if this Missouri team was really all that good, but they just found ways to win games over and over and over. Just a lot of one score wins. And that was just the perfect stop. Caleb Flagg, I mean, just all world edition he wound up being for Missouri. I mean, he really it was kind of slept on when it happened. I know everyone on the pod was really excited about it, but I mean, coming into the year, he wasn't even really a starter. It was Newsome and Hicks getting the first start. Hicks luckily wasn't even at this game, and he got the bulk of the snaps. He was excellent for a lot of the year, and I mean, he was the one that got back there, made the leap. But also shout out Dalen Carnell again. Dalen Carnell is just a playmaker, man. That guy has been just all world big for Mizzou, especially in their last two bowl wins. Really great stuff from him as well. I believe Nick DeLoach also got back in there. Zion Young wrapped up Brendan Sullivan's ankle. So just a really perfect play to kind of encapsulate a lot of what this team was about.
It feels like Dalen Carnell has always been a part of some of those big plays. The exclamation point almost on the Tennessee victory in 2023, getting that pick six. It feels like he's just in the right place at the right time. And if he sticks around with the Tigers, he didn't walk at senior day. He hasn't announced if he's going to the NFL draft or going to any of these senior bowls, postseason bowls to play in some of these. I feel like he could have like a Darius Robinson arc. I think he's a guy that's, kind of bleeds black and gold at this point and is just kind of like the epitome of a Mizzou Tiger. And if he sticks around, he probably has an opportunity to boost his own stock and see where he goes next season. But looking just like a little bit more specific in this victory for the Tigers, and I think one of the best places to start just about key contributors is just on the offensive side of the ball at the wide receiver position. Pretty incredible performance from Marquise Johnson, 7 receptions, 122 yards, a touchdown. I think someone should tell him to stop bringing the ball back sometimes on kickoffs, but offensively, he was just a monster. You saw Theo Weiss line up in the slot with Luther Burden gone, and at first, even you, Peyton, you admitted it to me. It was like, what is the offense doing here? What is Kirby Moore kind of drawing up? And when you have your best offensive player out for this game, and Luther Burden third, who opted out, maybe sometimes you do slot in your second best wide receiver into that spot where he saw success. Theo Weiss did see a good amount of production before he left with an injury after the first half, 5 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. But just offensively, Peyton, what did you like the most from this wide receiver core?
I definitely want to start with Theo Weiss because just when we look back on this era, I think Theo Weiss is going to be one of the first players we talk about. Dominic Lovett left under some rather bitter circumstances. Missouri needed someone to play that X spot so they could kick Luther Burden back into the slot. They found their man in Theo Weiss, who I mean, he was kind of like a misfit toy. That's kind of what this team really felt like the last 2 years. Just a collection of guys that kind of got overlooked, just not super highly regarded in a lot of respects. Theo Weiss was a former 5-star that never really broke into the rotation uh, full time at OU, but he blossomed at Missouri. And like you said, I mean, they put Theo Weiss in the slot. I thought that was absolutely bizarre at first. I was like, this guy has been like a big 50-50 ball catcher. Like, what an interesting I did not like the decision, to be honest with you. I thought it was really strange to see him in the slot, but man, he was eating up in the slot. And it makes sense. I mean, he's a tough matchup. He's got just enough speed to be consistently open from there. Not someone a linebacker is going to want to guard, not someone a safety is going to want to guard. And it was really good. It worked really well for him. 5 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown is a really good game. That was a half for Theo Weiss, and really not a fairy tale ending for him. He took that hard hit from Xavier Wapanka, I believe is how Panka, however you pronounce it, the safety for Iowa. I didn't like that the targeting was waved off, honestly. Theo Weiss was done after that with an upper body injury. I think that would maybe be a concussion or something like that. Maybe his shoulder got messed up. We don't really know, nor will we ever know, quite frankly. But tough ending for him. And I thought when I saw Theo Weiss was out, it was over, because I mean, then you were operating with Marquise Johnson, Daniel Blood, and Josh Manning as your top 3 receivers. But credit to Brady Cook and the receivers, they made it work. I mean, Marquise Johnson, this was so easily his best game as a pure receiver. That was something coming into the year. I remember I in particular said, I was like, I'd like to see Marquise Johnson actually be able to play a little more like a receiver. And there was that 44-yard long ball, that the taking the top off ability that we already knew he had. But I mean, he really was like like they had a game, like, credit to Kirby Moore. He had a real game plan for Marquise Johnson, and it worked. You know, it wasn't perfect. He had 2 really ugly drops on balls he absolutely should not have dropped, but that's got to give you a whole ton of confidence going into the next year that this guy, Marquise Johnson, he's not even going to have to be the number 1 guy. It's going to be Kevin Coleman. So that opens up a lot of positive energy for me, at least. Daniel Blood had a couple nice catches. He had a tough drop as well, but he looked actually pretty solid. Manning didn't have a catch, but he had a touchdown run on a jet sweep, which was really interesting. He was maybe the last receiver on the field I'd expect to get a ball on a jet sweep, but he went in untouched. So good for him. Logan Muckey got the first catch of his career on what wound up being the game-winning drive. That's what that last drive, man, had a 22-yard reception from Tavoris Jones, a 6-yard catch from Logan Muckey. James Madison was out there a good amount of snaps, including that last drive. Gotta love that stuff in a bowl game. And it all wound up working out all right. I mean, without Luther Burden, without Mookie Cooper, I mean, they were down their top 3 receivers coming into the year in the second half, and they wound up finding a way to score just enough to come away with a bowl win in their 10th win of the season.
It takes me back to 2021. And you look at that bowl game against Army in the Armed Forces Bowl, and there was a walk-on tight end who missed a catch in Kibet Chipiater. And, you know, at the time, I don't think a lot of people knew who Kibet was. The next year, he did see an uptick in time on the field. But I think it's just really cool when you see a guy like Logan Muckey make a catch, because I think that's a name a lot of Mizzou fans have probably heard before, just from special teams being around, you know, that wide receiver room. He's been around for a couple years now. That's massive for him. Tavoris Jones, who was a 4-star running back a couple years ago and really just hasn't broken through after his first season as a freshman in 2022. It looked promising what he could bring to the table, and just really hasn't broken through. And I even, you know, threw his name out there. Maybe he's a guy who enters the transfer portal, goes closer to home. He's from El Paso, but he's stuck around. And, you know, without Kwan Lacey in the fold, maybe he sees some kind of opportunity next season just to kind of step up behind Jamal Roberts. And Hardy, you know, who's coming over from Louisiana Monroe. So it's just those kind of opportunities that you build things in bowl games. And it's just, even with the Tigers, you know, not having too many opt-outs, it was really cool to see some of these guys step up in these opportunities. And you talk about some of those drops, and a lot of the guys made up for it. And the funny thing about Marquise Johnson, I think someone sent it in one of our Missouri group chats, just alumni group chats, Payton, is that, oh, he's not just a deep threat. He only had 12 yards after catch. And I think that was kind of funny to think, because I felt like there was some catches he had were just kind of intermediate receptions, and he kind of tore up some yards there, but still a massive day for him. First time breaking 100 yards in a game, and he's poised to be a key contributor next season. Let's look at just Brady Cook real quick. I mean, you can talk for as long as you want on this one, Payton. He was the leading rusher in this game. Mizzou had to face a Big Ten defensive line and really could not break through with Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel. But 54 yards on the ground for Brady Cook. Of course, you got to factor in, sacks going down with the ball there. But still, you saw the fake pitch, stuff like that. I mean, how much did that excite you for next season with possibly Bo Pribula running that play? And then, I mean, what did it just kind of feel like for you to watch Brady Cook one last time in a Mizzou uniform?
I'm happy for Brady Cook because he looked really, just the word that came to mind for me was healthy. I mean, he looked like just a completely different player out there. I mean, not that I thought he was playing terrible like a lot of people did. I really didn't think it ever got to even 2022 level bad for Brady Cook at any point in this year, but he was not healthy for a lot of the year. He was playing through a broken bone in his wrist, as it turns out. It did finally get confirmed. He was playing through that. He had the leg injury against Auburn that he infamously went to the hospital, and he came back. He looked like he was 100%. It wasn't a perfect day for him by any stretch, but I mean, for a lot of that game, just really accurate throws. He was zipping it in that first half for a lot of it. Lots of throws on the money. It was the best he's looked running the ball in ages, all year, I'd say, outside of the Arkansas scramble. He had some ugly times scrambling or just designed runs. I didn't think that was the case today. And like you said, this was a legit, I mean, Iowa's known for its defense. This was a legit defense they were going against. And Brady Cook, I mean, over 300 yards total, just really put on a show, and it was really fitting for him. I think a big part of the game plan was, let's just let Brady Cook, who put his whole body on the line really for the most successful era in Mizzou football in well over a decade, let's let him just kind of have fun out there. And he paid it off. They went out on top. Look, man, Brady Cook is not the perfect quarterback. I mean, I think that's clear to anyone. He doesn't have an NFL arm. That's just the end of the day. He'll make it in the NFL, at least stick with the training camp, I'm sure, but he's not super accurate. He doesn't have the strongest arm. But you know what, man? This team went 21-5 under him the last 2 years. They won the first New Year's Six game in team history, technically, because the Cotton Bowl did not count as a New Year's Six in the BCS era. So the first New Year's Six win in team history, 11 wins last year, 10 wins this year. He literally played his ass off every second he was on the field. I mean, his teammates' reactions to him alone, I mean, should kind of tell you a lot. I will have nothing but positive things to say about Brady Cook. There's going to be people that maybe question whether a better quarterback gets Mizzou to the playoff this year or not. I personally don't think so. I mean, the games they lost, I don't think Brady Cook or anyone else really had a big hand in. A&M, they just got rolled. Alabama, that game just got away from them when Brady Cook went out. So maybe if Brady was healthier, they had a different quarterback that whole game. Maybe that one flips. South Carolina was a defensive issue. I think people should really just kind of step back and appreciate what Brady Cook did these last 2 years. No, it wasn't perfect by any stretch, but it was pretty damn close. And I think if you had told everyone 2 years ago they'd go 21-5, win 2 bowl games, including a New Year's Six over Ohio State, everyone on planet Earth would have taken that. Brady Cook, it was his childhood dream to be in this scenario, to just be the quarterback of this team. He got to live it, and he played it at a high level, in my opinion. So I'm very grateful for Brady Cook. He gave me a lot of great memories, and I'm excited to see what happens for him at the next level.
Yeah, and it can't be, brought up enough that, even with how much Eli Drinkwitz, supports him and backed him, there were times that he tried to replace him. There were times that, Brady Cook had to welcome competition. It was him against a 4-star Elite 11 quarterback who really just never panned out. And there was just opportunities for guys to come into that room from other Power 4 conferences, Power 5 conferences at the time, take his job. And some of those quarterbacks passed on the opportunity. Some entered, but it felt like he just never wavered on that opportunity to stick to his childhood dream and stick with the Tigers. And I remember, we had just some jokes about, there's a lot of connections between Memphis and Mizzou. It's like, oh, if Brady Cook loses his job, would he transfer? And I think one of the biggest things is, he was just a Mizzou guy. Even if he lost his job, I think this is the place he'd want to be, and he stuck with it. And I think that's kind of like the embodiment of what the true Sun mentality that Mizzou kind of puts out there, and just what they expect from some of these players, and really got Mizzou out of a dark era of football, and kind of just paved the way of what recruits, transfers can kind of expect under Eli Drinkwitz and just his staff kind of moving forward. Looking at the defensive side of the ball now, Payton, I mean, just key contributors for you. Some guys, kind of being banged up in this one. Joseph Charleston was banged up at points. Different guys, contributing at the linebacker position. But for you, I mean, who really jumped off the page?
Well, the one. Well, okay, I'll change that answer. For 3 quarters, it was everyone in the secondary because it was quite frankly pathetic for a lot of the game. But really, I think I would say the person that kind of jumped out at me would be, okay, I'll give 2. Tristan Newsome, I thought, had a very good game, had a couple really huge tackles that kind of ended Iowa's drives. And another one has to be Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is someone, again, it was not always perfect. I remember early on in his Mizzou career, had some real stupid penalties. And he, again, he had missed tackle problems, but boy, was he such a productive pass rusher these last 2 years. Had another 2 today, 7 straight games with a sack, I believe is the stat. Wound up just being the premier edge rusher they absolutely needed. I am a huge fan of Johnny Walker at the end of the day. Just such a good player. What a way for him to go out. I mean, after that Luke Bauer shank of a punt that kind of gave Iowa new life at the 40, I mean, he put them right. It was almost like just an average punt because Johnny Walker immediately got a huge sack to set up second in forever. So I would definitely say Johnny Walker probably is my defensive MVP. I know they don't give that out at the Music City Bowl like they did in the Cotton Bowl. But he was definitely the one that popped up for me. Also, very interesting that the stats broadcast has Philip Roche down as a tackle. I'm going to have to say that is incorrect.
That is interesting. I don't even think there was an instance where Josh Manning would have had an opportunity for a tackle, maybe on special teams.
I think it's just a miscount.
That's miscount, yeah. Payton, just from that aspect too. You mentioned Johnny Walker a couple plays into the game is not going to win defensive MVP for this game. Ended up having a good performance there. When you look at this era too, just for the Tigers, I mean, these past 2 seasons of Johnny Walker, do you feel like it's going to be a guy that a lot of fans will look back on and kind of remember with positive memories of him? You mentioned there were some boneheaded penalties early on, but these past 2 seasons feels like he was kind of almost like an unheralded guy. He was in the shadow of Darius Robinson, but still broke out with many opportunities and put himself on the map. And then these past 7 games, it just feels like he was very underrated.
Yeah, no, and look, when I say those penalties, I mean, I'm talking about one in the Cotton Bowl that was real dumb, and mostly 2022, 2021 instances. Probably mostly 2022. I doubt he played much at 2021, but definitely to people that paid close attention to this team the last 2 years, everyone will remember. Those fans will remember Johnny Walker. I mean, Darius Robinson was excellent last year. And you can argue that allowed Johnny Walker to be very productive as well. But I'd also argue Johnny Walker being good last year allowed Darius Robinson to excel. It was a very symbiotic relationship, I'd say, because Johnny Walker, I mean, another thing about Johnny Walker was every time he's talked to the media, he has gone out of his way to talk about how much Mizzou has meant to him, Talk about how much the brotherhood has meant to him. He never even, I mean, in the Arkansas postgame press conference, he talked about how there was no shot in hell he was missing this game. And, he's not the big time draft prospect that Darius Robinson is. He's going to be like a day 3 pick, but Johnny Walker, I think, is another guy that if you're a Mizzou fan, you'll look back on this era and you'll remember him. You're going to talk about guys like Luther Burden, Brady Cook. Darius Robinson will always be probably the first defensive guy I mention. And even the cornerbacks from last year, you'll mention those guys. But I think eventually Johnny Walker's name is going to come up in that conversation. Just a very good player. Yes, he got overshadowed by a lot of guys last year. But I mean, this year they needed him to step up and be that premier edge rusher, and he did that for them. This was a defense that was up and down a lot of the year. And if he hadn't taken the step forward he did, I think it would have been a lot worse.
My final note on the defense, and I'm looking up to just confirm this for myself as well. But Toriano Pride started the season with an interception, and he ended the season with an interception for the Tigers. Those were his only 2 picks the entire year, coming over from Clemson. And he kind of had a shaky year. Nicholas Deloach taking a good amount of snaps over him these past couple of weeks, but also kind of splitting those snaps between starts at that second corner position. But I thought that was funny, an interception sandwich for him. I'll let you talk real quick about special teams, Payton, before we do some quick hit notes about this game from some tweets I gathered. It did not look good early on. They ended up winning this game on a field goal, but at the same time, there were a lot of boneheaded decisions, mistakes on special teams that continue to happen. I'll let you just go one last time. Maybe we'll have an update on Eric Link in the future, but I mean, what was your takeaway there?
We won't. Eric Link, man, every time it feels like the pressure really gets put on, I mean, it'll be Luke Bauer throwing a fake field goal or fake punt touchdown that might have saved their season, or this time it was Blake Craig nailing a 51-yarder and a 57-yarder, like both with so much room to spare. Good for Blake Craig in particular, who had a pretty, I would say, rocky season. It's too many misses, end of the day. That's really what it was. But he has the leg. There's no doubt about that. Absolute cannon of a leg. I just watched my professional football team lose a game the other day because they were terrified to have their kicker attempt a 57-yarder. Drink with 4 minutes left is like, yeah, Blake Craig, go nail a 56-yarder for me real quick. So good for him there. But I don't know what else to say anymore. It's the past 3 years in particular, it's never been a good unit. But the last 3 years, it has just been such a joke. Yeah, there's my funny tweet. Blake Craig when the field goal distance doesn't start with a 4, and it's Adam Vinatieri. I mean, you have Marquise Johnson, who I like Marquise Johnson. He's a terrible kick returner. And he's taking these kicks out from like the 1-yard line. Just fair catch it. Stop getting tackled within the 15. Fair catch it and get out to the 25. Stupid garbage. Just garbage. You have a guy for Iowa who's just taken back a kick 100 yards, a late hit penalty on Mitch Walters. Really glad Mitch Walters got to take me on a trip down memory lane and giving a stupid penalty in his last game. He's getting a late hit on a punt, just a garbage punt at the end of the game. I don't know how Eric Link is getting away with this. He's going to get away with this one because Drink's going to go, look, right or wrong, Drinkwitz is very loyal to his guys. He's going to be loyal to Eric Link. He's not going to get rid of Eric Link. He brought Eric Link over with him from App State. He's going to ride or die with him at this point. But it is just such a poorly coached unit that it's every game we're talking about some stupid thing they did. And I'm glad this time it was at least mitigated by Blake Craig being very good. And look, at the end of the day, bowl game trophies to me are going to erase a lot of mistakes. But it's just every single week that this team plays a game, the special teams is doing something unbelievably dumb. I'm not asking them to be South Carolina out there on special teams. I'm asking them to be average, be normal, just don't make me angry one time in a season, because every single week this season, they did something so incredibly stupid it made me angry and we had to talk about it.
I think one of the biggest things too about the whole conversation is you just haven't heard Eli Drinkwitz really talk about the unit as a whole. You've seen opportunities like this after this game. Who's going to ask about some of those issues on special teams? Mizzou Tigers won this game. You're finding a little bit of those positives. How did what's the update on Theo Weiss? What did he mean? What did Brady Cook mean? Talk about some of these younger guys that contributed. Kind of seems like it's swept under the rug sometimes. I think one of the biggest times that there was a real conversation about maybe issues on special teams was when Will Norris eventually got a rule changed in 2022 against Kentucky, because that was something that no one on the staff kind of that wasn't even the special team's fault. That was just like a whole rule that had to be changed because Will Norris hit a punter that would just made a stupid decision. So it's one of those things that I just feel like we haven't heard Eli Drinkwitz really address the situation yet, just kind of the issues it's seen. Maybe it's something that comes up in an end of season press conference or during the spring, but it is a unit that could end up, losing this team games next year. This team won't be as good is what we've kind of projected, and there's going to be some tight games there. You don't want it to come down to special teams.
And again, I mean, you think about that Will Norris play. Nobody was happier at the end of the day, probably, that play happened than Eric Lenk, because it took away from the actual game-losing decisions to keep kicking the ball short over and over to Will Levis and give a Kentucky offense that was struggling horrifically all day short fields to go and score. I mean, and then you had the Stonehouse drop punt, and instead of picking it up and punting it like a normal person, he tries to run 27 yards to pick up a first down. The unit has not been well coached at all, especially in the last 3 years. And like you said, when next year the talent is there's going to be a talent shift. A lot of these really good players we've been talking about the last 2 years are really gone now. You're going to have a smaller margin of error, and you can't have things like short, take kicking the ball short and giving teams shorter fields. You can't have Marquise Johnson trying to just cheating your team 20 yards on kickoff returns. The margin of error is going to be way too small for that next year. And it didn't wind up killing them this year. Mark my words, it will at some point next year if it doesn't improve.
All right, we can spin off special teams. It can just be a conversation for the spring now. We don't want to bore you too much with some of the frustrations we've noticed with that unit. Just some quick notes here. This one comes from Ben Stevens on X. Since 2020, this is the 33rd game Iowa has scored 21 plus points. This is the first time the Hawkeyes have lost such a game. There was a point in the game, too, that Iowa was averaging more yards per play than it has since 2019. So that kind of shows you how much that defense was struggling at times. The Tigers come away with a 3-point victory. Initial thought from that stat, Payton?
Well, I mean, it certainly is more interesting, this stat, when you don't get to do it against teams like Maryland and Minnesota, huh? A good SEC team gets lined up across from you, and suddenly you need more than 21 points. I kid. I don't really, but I kid. No, I mean, it was credit to Iowa, by the way. I mean, Tim Lester, I think, legitimately has changed a lot of what Iowa is offensively. You can tell that's not the same old Iowa, just stagnant, boring offense. There's creativity. I mean, the commentators brought it up well. I mean, Tim Lester last year was on the Packers coaching staff. They said, like, everything they're trying to do offensively is like the Green Bay Packers right now. And you see it. The run designs are very creative. The O-line blocking scheme, I like it a lot. Brendan Sullivan, like, legitimately, you could tell, like, the passing offense was simplified, and he made it work with them for a lot of that game before Brendan Sullivan just totally came unglued towards the end there. But so I'll give a little bit of credit to Iowa, because it wasn't just Mizzou being terrible. It was a lot of it. Mizzou was not tackling well. It took Corey Batoon way too long to just put a QB spy on Brendan Sullivan. He finally did it in the second half with Tristan Newsome doing it a lot, I noticed. And it led to Brendan Sullivan throwing a terrible interception and him scrambling out of bounds behind the line of scrimmage and a goal to go. But I will give a little bit of credit to Iowa for that. But good on Mizzou for bucking that trend. I mean, obviously, I joked about Iowa just doing this against bad Big Ten teams, but Iowa is known for winning a lot of these ugly games for a reason. Their defense is legit real good. So Missouri getting 27 against them and being able to overcome 24 points from Iowa, that says a lot about where this program is, man. They find ways to win.
Missouri held Iowa to 3 points in that second half, which was pretty massive as well. There was that big scramble in the first half from Brendan Sullivan where he got to the 1 yard line and it just collapsed defense from the Missouri Tigers. Like you said, there was a lot of adjustments into that second half that prevented Iowa from pulling away with that victory. A couple more. Yeah, and a couple more stats here from SEC Mike on X. Eli Drinkwitz 38 wins are the most in Missouri history after the first 5 seasons on the job, which is kind of, when I first read that, is kind of unbelievable to think because there were 500 teams there until 2023. Like that is just kind of where the program was. It was either 500 or one game under 500, and just Eli Drinkwitz these past 2 years with Brady Cook and just his staff just really kind of changed the momentum of the program.
Not to mention, I mean, think about what Drinkwitz did this against. He did this in the SEC, like against like these Georgia teams that are juggernauts. Like this is not an easy conference to win in at all. So look, a lot has been made about Drinkwitz as an in-game coach. I myself in particular am pretty critical of that, especially when he's a play caller. I just think he was a rotten play caller. But man, he's getting the Jimmies and Joes like no other coach has in Mizzou history. The recruiting is out of this world for Mizzou. The culture seems to be in a really, really good spot. Drinkwitz knows how to hire his assistants. I know we just spent like a whole segment railing on Eric Link, but I mean, you got to think about some of the assistants he's brought in. Curtis Looper, the job he's done. Jacob Peeler, I think, is the best position coach, arguably in America. Just the job he's done in 5 years. I'm being dead serious. Brandon Jones, he got him off his couch, and I mean, it's just been an all-world transformation. So that's not even before we even get into the defensive guys. So this is real impressive. A real impressive stat. Just I have one little quick question for you, Kenny. If you were to rank Drinkwitz's best out of the 38 wins and worst out of the 38 wins, what would your answer be? Because I have my answers. My best would be Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. I think that's easily the best. You can argue 2020 LSU, maybe the Tennessee game in 23. I think Cotton Bowl rules all. Worst is absolutely Middle Tennessee State in 2023. That was the worst win ever.
Yeah, I was going to go with the Tennessee game in 2023. I feel like you could throw Florida in there as well, but I think that's more of a win of Brady Cook and Luther Burden. I think that's the fourth down play is something that you just kind of chalk up to the players for how they pulled off that win and kept that season alive for your New Year's Six Bowl. I think you'd go with Tennessee. There was just a lot of feelings behind that game and a lot of like, underneath, behind the scenes stuff that a lot of people just didn't know. Going into that one, icing the kicker at the end, and it was just a pretty electric victory, and just meant a lot to those guys after getting blown out the year before. So I'd go with that one.
2 years before, even 60 points plus in both.
Yeah, and so it was just a lot of built up probably anger towards that program and kind of ending that rivalry. Not necessarily a rivalry, but it was a team they played every single season. Ending that one with a win, and know the next time Missouri will be playing Tennessee. I think Middle Tennessee is the easiest one. It's kind of easy just to go back to the 2023 season because of how monumental it was for the program. I think after that game, there was a lot of people pretty skeptical. I think even throughout the entire season, a lot of evaluators were still skeptical about Missouri because of that performance. And I even heard it after the season. The Tigers beat Ohio State, albeit different quarterback, no Marvin Harrison Jr., some opt-outs. But that game kind of kept coming up during the offseason as well when people were evaluating Mizzou. Still got up to 10 wins and just finished with 3 losses.
No, yeah, Tennessee is definitely, I think, my number 2. Like you mentioned, I mean, it would have been cool to see that series continue. I mean, I think that would have eventually blossomed into not a full-on rivalry like the way people think of Tennessee and Alabama or anything, but like a good, like, that's a matchup you'll have on a TV.
Definitely. Last little thing here for our YouTube viewers. I saw the photos of this Payton, and then I found this video from Natalie Jones at ABC 17. But Drinkwitz picking up the trophy, and I was like, that thing must have looked really heavy or felt really heavy in his hands. And then I saw the video; he nearly dropped it. I mean, what would that kind of been? I feel like it would have just been another kind of like Drinkwitz moment if he ended up did breaking that trophy. But he saved it at the last second.
Do you think they would have fixed it, or do you think they would have just kept the battle scarred Music City trophy? I think they would have kept it battle scarred.
I think you keep it battle scarred. You look at the Lombardi Trophy, that one of the Patriots' final ones. I think it might have been the final one when Gronk was there, and he hit it with he used it as a baseball bat when they threw out the first pitch of the Red Sox game, and they left the dent in the trophy. So I think that's something you keep.
Yeah, I agree. But man, Drinkwitz was very complimentary of this bowl, by the way. He said it was a really great bowl. So they must have liked their experience. Music City Bowl is a pretty strong bowl. I mean, it's not like a top tier SEC bowl, but it's like that second rung.
Yeah, certainly, and I think he just really missed out. He got all of his gear in 2020 and didn't get that opportunity to play in his first bowl game as the Mizzou head coach, and finally got to do it. That's going to do it for our preview or our recap of this game. Missouri Tigers finishing their regular season with a 27-24 victory over Iowa in the Music City Bowl.
Just the season, man, not the regular season.
Oh yeah, sorry, just the entire season. They finished a postseason play, is what I meant there. A couple of these guys are going to be playing in some of these senior bowls, so we'll continue to monitor that. Right now, Missouri Tigers are up big at halftime against Alabama State, and we'll talk
Grill
about
is
that.
healthy, everyone.
He is. They just showed him on the TV too. So we'll get to that game and a bunch of just other Mizzou news on Friday. But until then, have a good New Year's, and we will see you next year on the Unwritten Rule.